Do you remember your first music memory that made you really fall in love with music?
Sugarhill Gang. That was just like a phenomenon when I was a child. That was a big record. Yeah, man. I think Rodgers had a huge part in hip hop in that sense, because they were rhyming to like Good Times, was the Chic record, and then of course you hear the infamous story about like Another One Bites the Dust bass line being heavily influenced by that bass part on Good Times. I don't know. It was just a child in Atlantis apartments in the mid-70s. And then it just started to explode. It started to be these really fun records where like music sounded sort of R&B, but like the guys were just like rapping on top, with that like late 70s style, rhyming style, that I was pretty much hooked in. And then of course, Planet Rock comes out and you're like, what is that? It was just like completely alien to anything we'd ever heard before. But it was so in keeping with sci-fi, the sci-fi genre, science fiction. So all the things that I'd still love and adore today.
Throughout your career, the concept of I am other has manifested itself through the music and the fashion. Can you trace back to a moment in your life where that idea, the identity from the margins, where that kind of was seated?
I've always been like a little left of center, but I think music helped me and other people make sense of it. It's like you're only crazy when there's nothing to go along with it. You know what I mean? When you have these eccentric characteristics, it's more accepted and understood when there's some sort of skill set to go along with it. Doesn't necessarily have to be deemed talent, just something to make sense of it. It's only when we walk around mumbling to ourselves and there's no byproduct is when they go weird. For example, Jay-Z mumbles when he writes his songs. He mumbles for 10, 15 minutes. And he comes back with 16 bars of one of the most comprehensive verses you've heard in a long time. He does it every time. But again, there is some sort of skill set to accompany his madness. As they say, there's a method to the madness. Right. I wouldn't consider myself one of those people, but I definitely was a little left of center and a little odd. But music was like my inner sanctum. Like that's where I found like my peace. So let's say you got like a voice or a hi-hat, you can make it sound like, or you can make it sound like based on the way you tweak it. So this is like, so
you really use all these?
Yeah, you do. But it looks like, I know exactly what this one does. But you will, because this is basically low end, this is the middle end, and this is the high end.
I'm curious, when you go into the studio for the first time with an artist, is there something in particular, is there a method to it?
They walk in the studio and they have something that they're looking for. And then then there's also the element of like their voice and what it sounds like. And then I've got to find some interesting textures to add some sort of juxtaposition there so it makes the voice stick out even more. And then there's also the energy and the experiences they walk in with on them in the studio. So like, no matter had a bad morning or whatever, that also provides a vibe. We can either fight that vibe or we can go along with it and expound upon it and try and find a song in there somewhere. So when you mix the three things together, three things like, what they want when they come in the studio, what they're saying they want, what their voice sounds like, and what would be interesting to pair it with. And then there's, again, the energy that they walk in. When you mix those three things together, usually it's something that feels, interesting and curious. And that's what you want. You want something to, grab people. Everybody get up.
Having two songs that are pretty much the biggest songs of the year. How did your mentality go into the making of that? Maybe we could start with Blurred Lines.
I didn't go into it with anything. I actually went into it with no expectation, and if anything, I just went looking for fun, and looking for something that felt festive and felt like it would lift people. So I just went looking for that. You can't go into a scenario looking for something that's big or it's gonna sound that way. I'm just happy that the universe rewarded us for just trying to lift people's spirits. And again, you can't take authorship for the success of anything. You really can't. The success is determined by the people who purchase and stream and vote and request and share the songs. In my opinion, that's what quantifies the definition of a successful song or huge or big, because the bigness of it is the amount of people who take the initiative to press send or purchase or like I said before, vote or whatever. They don't have to do those things, but the fact that they've put us here. The people make the decisions. It's no different than any other discipline. The people make the decisions here. In fact, everything that goes on this planet is made by the decision of a human being. Thank God, a lot of new musicians are realizing, that's when you can sort of effectuate change. That's why we're seeing so much great music come out, because these kids are you know what? I'm not waiting on a record label. I'm not waiting on a radio station. I'm going to put my music up and out to the world, and if it's meaningful to people, then it will catch fire. And in a lot of cases, we've seen it everywhere from the likes of the Kendrick Lamars to Lorde, two of my favorite artists at the moment. They just didn't care, put her song up on the Soundcloud, shot her video, and it's okay, I may sign with you guys or not. And I love that, because she's 16 years old. So she, to me, is a shining example of where we're headed. The power is in numbers. The power is in the people. So, it's just a good time in music right now. It really is. So much in the past 30 years, it's just been regurgitated because it seems to win. We've allowed lawyers to become CEOs of businesses that are all about content, and that doesn't make sense unless the lawyer has a good ear. But for the most part, they're going to be thinking about things fiscally. And so that's when you see, certain record companies putting out music they're putting out soap or macaroni and cheese. They make these very small improvements, but just put the same thing out. And then you see these kids that are we're not having it. That's what this is about. That's what music is about. And that's what us as a species, that's what we're here for, to evolve and make things better. And music, I'm proud to say, is in my opinion, at the forefront. And look, and across the other disciplines as well, it's getting better. But I think music is leading. We have a 16-year-old with number ones around the world who wrote her own song and was speaking about society. I think she's today's definition of a singer-songwriter. I feel the same way about Kendrick Lamar. I feel the same way about Ed Sheeran. These are kids who are I have a point of view, and I'm not going to wait on the old antiquated system to allow me to have my just due and speak my piece. I just think that's remarkable. Everybody get up.
To stay on Blurred Lines for a quick second, can you give us the backstory of how that song came to be?
When we went in the studio with Blurred Lines, it was more or less let's just do something fun. That's, everybody's so serious. What are we so mad about? We have good lives, let's push that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Not anything ostentatious or rubbing in anyone's face, but let's talk about the simple things in life, because I find that we get a lot of joy out of the really basic things. The intention was just to sort of hold up the mirror. You could be happy. Let's just try that. Let's make something musically that gives everyone a reason to get up. Hence the phrase, everybody get up.
Was that particularly gratifying since you've been working with Robin Thicke throughout his whole career?
I have Jimmy Iovine to thank for that. He's the one that introduced me to Robin. He told me about his voice, and once I met Robin and we began working together, it just kept going. His talent, it just keeps going, and the spirit of his character musically continues to grow.
We're up all night to the sun. We're up all night to get some. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky.
You have a history with Daft Punk. Can you talk about the making of that track and how that came to be?
When I walked in the studio, that track was done. They wanted me to write to it, and I thought I was just like writing a top line, to like a dance record. But once I heard it and understood what they wanted to do, musically it just sort of dictated what the melody should be, and the feeling of the song and the color of the song just felt like it needed to be something that was festive and celebratory. And I chose the subject of two people, a guy, meeting a girl and knowing instantly that they had something special. He's being appreciative that he's aware of how rare that is to meet someone and know. Because they could be anywhere, right? They could have been on the opposite side of the planet, but for whatever reason, they decided to both be in this place at the same time, and that connection was made. And before you go on doing whatever you're going to do later that night, you just take a second and live forever within a moment of appreciation. Like, wow, isn't this crazy? Like, you could be anywhere in the world and you're right here so that I could meet you. And you're not going to back down at who you are, because who you are helped you make those decisions which led you to this place. So you know what? Let's toast. That's what that moment is.
Bring me down, can't none bring me down. Your love is too high. Bring me down, can't none bring me down. I said,
Can you talk a little bit about how hip hop has grown this year? I mean, you talked about Kendrick Lamar going platinum without really having, that big of a radio single, and it seemed like before everything was like singles. Now it's kind of like, oh, you have a great album, the fans will speak.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, that term single, I'm sure it was made for a good reason, back in the day when they chose to deem that as the term to recognize what a single is. But, that mentality that goes into it, is it a single? I think Kendrick has superseded that, because kids don't think like that. They think like, do I like you or do I not like you? Do I believe what you're saying in this record or do I not believe what you're saying in this record? What you're saying and what you're doing, does this resonate with me? The melody, is it, am I convicted by it? The music, is it a haunting thing that just like this catchiness like that I can't escape? The answer is yes. I'm into you. I'm down. I'm a soldier, and I'll ride with you, and I'll argue. If I never meet you, I'll argue at a restaurant, at dinner, or I'll argue in the middle of a festival if I think you're better. That only scrapes the surface of what good musicians are able to do to us. I swear by Q-Tip. I swear by, Donald Byrd or Roy Ayers or Stevie Wonder or Donald Fagen, Steely Dan, the Doobie Brothers. I swear by those groups. There's so many, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Like, I swear by the stuff that they do. I'll go to war with whoever because I know what that means. Or like, come on, the continuous fire of Jay-Z. Come on, this guy's been doing it since 85, putting out records since 85. #1 albums, still to this date. Lyrically, no one wants to see him. Or like Eminem. Come on. The best. Those guys are like, that's what good musicians do to us.
clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth.
definitely have a lot of wisdom within you. What advice would you give to a young artist watching right now?
Oh, this is a free world. This is a free world now. It's different. And there are some restrictions, but there's no restriction in you being exposed to the world to be discovered as an artist. I would say believe in your direction and do it. Spend less time talking about it and more time trying to like perfect it and put it out there. And you know, if there's fire, the kids will sniff it out. They always do. And they'll turn you all the way up if they feel like that's where you belong. That's all. So all you have to do is be true to your craft, and they see that. When they see you going inward and being proud of who you are and what you are, and you know, there's some good intention, they're going to support you. It's a numbers game though, right? 7 billion people on the planet, less than a third online. You know, that's a pretty significant number, which raises the odds for you to become heard. I mean, even the like most boring person on Twitter has 100 followers, right? 100 people who don't know you from a can of paint. Why? Because everything's about numbers. So there's benefit. You just have to make the numbers work for you. For a lot of us when we're young, it's like, oh, the big houses, the Ferraris, you know, depending on who you're talking to, the chicks with the spray-on tans, you know, all, you know, the jewelry, the, you know, the trips to islands that end with A, or some sort of weird foreign apostrophe under, you know, behind it, and the champagne. For some people, that means a lot. And definitely, I've made songs that 100% would check that box. I've made other songs too, but more importantly, what's always been important to me, man, is the music. And the Grammys is an association that completely recognizes that first and foremost. And I'm just so glad that, like, in my years of being young and just everything moving so fast, they could have turned away. They could have looked past the music and looked at all the other things of, like, you know, just us being young. But they didn't. They always let the music speak first, and that's all I ever wanted. And I just can't believe that, like, actually I can believe, and I do appreciate it, but it just feels good. Let me say it that way. It feels good to know that, like, the most important thing to me is the thing that kept us all alive, is the music. And this is a, you know, Grammys should also be known as a preservation society. We don't get recognized for how expensive our videos are. We don't get recognized for, you know, the superficial aspects and all the other ancillary things that come along with being in this business. You're recognized for the first and foremost important thing, and that's the music. And I'm just so incredibly humbled and honored and appreciative to be a part of, you know, this year's consideration on any level, and to even be doing this interview, because as I often say, I could be just back home in my room with a demo, or not. Could be even worse. No music at all, and just a bunch of ideas that I could be frustrated to get out, but with no outlet. But instead, it's the complete opposite. In fact, I'm doing what I love to do.